know what you're getting.
Okay, so
Same.
we are being recorded, even though no one's on Zoom for the first time since we've offered Zoom, which is insane. So IRL. Okay, we should call to order. We should call to order at 6:02, and you're gonna be our interim clerk. Thank you.
Jim Cardona.
No,
Yeah.
no
Jim.
No Jim. Apparently not.
He might tune in.
Yeah.
Okay, public comment period. We have one member of the public with us. Do you have anything you'd like to speak about that's not on the agenda?
No.
Great. Okay. Does anyone have any additional items to add to the agenda? We can squeeze everything in just when we're planning. Okay, great. Can we review and approve the minutes of February 13th? Did anyone see those? Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sally seconds. All those in favor? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. I did not receive any official correspondence. Nothing was in the mailbox. Emails. Oh, what was that?
What was the thing? And I had the blue text.
It was the Addison County Regional Planning Commission doing a tree forest survey.
Wondering about town forest.
That's right. That's right.
I should have printed that out.
I think
That's
I did it on
right.
the agenda. I'm bad. I thought it was on here, but to go over the RFP stuff for the Timberlands Trail, is that?
That's old business beat. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
I
good.
was like trying to read through.
And then, yes, we do have correspondence. The Addison County Regional Planning Commission asked us about what town forests and management plans we have in place. And we were able to give them some information about that. And it seemed as though they had a town forest listed for us, which we correctly explained was the Seth Hill, which is not a town forest. And so we corrected that for them and gave them some more information, and that's the last we heard.
Yep.
So were you on this time?
Well, Sharon forwarded me the
Oh, okay.
email that I forwarded to you guys.
Okay.
To get clarification, because I was like, Bristol Town Forest, I was like, there's no Bristol Town Forest. There's a bunch of names on there that I was not familiar with, and I was like, all right, so that's how that all kind of.
And that reminds me that I said I would send him the interim management plan for the Saunders, which I need to find off my computer.
We're getting feedback from somewhere. I'm not sure who it is. Is it me? It was me. Okay, great. I have a problem. Okay, so we dealt with that. I feel we get something like that every 3 years or so.
Yeah, they just wanted it for
Yeah.
their information, it sounds like.
Yeah, they just have a reason why they wanted it. Great, new business annual report. I'm gonna cut that one of these days because there is no new business about the annual report, but no one corrected me in the draft either. So I think we're all complicit on that point. So we can move right to old business then. That'll be tabled till December. Old business, wildlife corridor project, debrief the planning commission meeting on February 18th and discuss the next steps. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I guess, as most of you know, we had our meeting with the planning commission.
And we were there, and Max.
We were both there, and Max, who was one of the students that was involved with the project, was there, which was great. I think my basic takeaway is that we're gonna have to do fairly how to put this. I think giving them some guidelines that are very, very pointedly not obstructing the idea of further development is going to be the way to really think about it. That is just a pushback that we knew we were, I think that's the reality is that their job is to figure out how to facilitate at this moment increased housing in the town. And that we've got to be very, very cognizant of that if we're going to have this be useful to them. I think I tried really hard to make the point at that meeting that what we're talking about is not in conflict with the idea of increased housing density, particularly in the increased density in the sort of more in town areas. And that even development outside of the town center can be done in a way that can facilitate maintaining connectivity of habitat. But I think in all of those conversations, you got to kind of get past the initial frustration that folks in the development and building world, which I'm obviously also very familiar with professionally. You gotta like get past that idea that you're like here to tell them they can't build houses.
Like as soon as the one woman was like, so, but could we make the corridor like over here and they would still go there? And you're like, for most of them, she's like,
Sometimes, yeah.
all right, let's go.
And I think that's, so another thing that the point to make that brings up is that we've got to also start, I think in hindsight, looking back at that meeting, we started with some certain assumptions of what everybody was going to understand about what we were talking about that were probably not correct. Like, we got to start at square one with the idea that we're talking about connecting habitats that animals need to be able to move between. And like, when we just say wildlife corridors, we all know what we're talking about. Not everybody does. I think people immediately, and some folks think wildlife crossings immediately when you say corridors, which is not the same thing. And so I think there were some really good things to take away from that meeting, strategically in thinking about how to approach this issue with the development, with the planning commission and with landowners, that like we're on a basic level, we need to like explain what we're trying to do and why it matters on a really nuts and boltsy basic level. And then also just really stress that this doesn't have to be, we all understand where Vermont is at housing wise, and we know what has to be done. And if we come at it from a direction of like trying, sounding like we're trying to discourage new home construction, we're not getting anywhere. So we've got to figure out how to like make tailor what we're suggesting and tailor our message to the idea that we know we're working with increased development.
I feel like at the end of that call, you had done that, right?
I hope so.
Like I really do. There was like a breakthrough and they were like, okay, cool. And you were like, because you said, you were like, we're not against building, like we're not against you, we're with you, we're trying to sort out how to facilitate this all together. And I feel like they were open to making that more of a partnership than a like, we're staying there with pickets or whatever.
Yeah, so I thought the door was definitely open.
Yeah.
To continue those conversations, and I really want to debrief with Max as well.
Yeah.
I know I was supposed
I've
to.
talked to him
You
a
said
little
he would
bit.
talk to you.
Yeah, he's working for me at the moment, part-time, so he's kind of around. And we haven't talked enough about that, but it would be interesting. I've got a lot of thoughts for him about how to tailor his message as well. That'll be good.
Yeah, from an education standpoint, I think he learned a lot from that meeting.
Yeah.
He was really overwhelmed in some ways, right? I
Yeah.
think he learned a lot on that moment of, oh, this is the real world, and it was really good for him in terms of like developing as a student and like maybe even changing some like ideas he may carry for the rest of his life, even with those ideas. It was really fascinating to watch. He was like really surprised by their responses and on the fly trying to tailor his responses, and it's actually really good in terms
He
of like,
did well
educational
with it too.
Yeah.
He's a sharp dude.
Yeah.
He did really well with it.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is I think we did get some sort of directive from them as to like what we need to do. And I think it's my like general sort of takeaway of the last like couple months of this project is that there's just a lot of work to do, and it's a living project, and we've kind of got to come up with like two different tracks. There's mapping on a real like granular level, and there's also like providing framework for people to look at development through and to look at work on their own properties through that doesn't require that mapping, because like we're not going to map the wildlife corridors of Bristol, period. But what we can do, and what we can do quicker and what might be more productive for people, is to sort of develop a set of criteria that people can like look at their own property or look at a property they're thinking about developing through and say, do I have these features? And how can I like how like a template basically for developing around wildlife? And that's like, that might be really interesting to be like a sort of next direction that this goes through.
Yeah, and they had specifically asked us if we could figure out, what was it? There was some kind of, they wanted us to talk to, they thought maybe it was Waitsfield, but they weren't positive it was Waitsfield, with a forest and wildlife corridor thing. And they had done something with overlaying conflict locations. And they didn't really know what it was, but they hoped we could look into that, whatever it was they were remembering. And that somehow they thought that was, they had seen something about that and thought that maybe we could think about developing something like that for our town, with like different layers of ownership and habitat or something it sounded like,
Yeah,
right?
Corridors, I mean,
And they were
they
asking
seem like
if-
they
yeah.
really wanted a map of corridors,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Mhm.
to
Which
some
is-
degree, not every single thing, but like
Mhm.
of what we know. To,
Right.
yeah, like you're saying, kind of overlay on, okay, this is what we wanna build on, this is what we wanna do, where's that? Okay, if we put this building here, it messes this up, if we put it here, it doesn't, or plant the shrubs or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
It seemed like they were really kind of tactile on, we need
Mhm.
some sort of visual.
And they wanted like real maps, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
So how
recurring
does
theme,
that-
was they wanted
So-
maps.
Sophie Mazuita had, that was one of the
Mhm.
items that she had
Yes,
given us,
yes.
that she could provide
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
us.
totally,
Maybe in combination now with all the data that you all have collected with Middlebury
Yeah.
College, and
yeah, that's a good idea,
that might be one future direction we could think about.
yeah, I like that.
The one thing that gets me a little nervous about the map being the thing, the
Yeah.
reference point is that there's just like no way that we're gonna make it granular enough that it can be, that you can say, okay, here's this map, if we avoid these arrows
Mhm.
going throughout it, we're good. And I think it has to exist in combination with, like, say, a template for,
Guidance.
you know, where you
Yeah.
can say, okay, like, this isn't the big yellow arrow on the map, but we do have this like cattail marsh through the bottom, the like southwest corner of our property that's, you know, borders a little strip of hemlock wood before the hardwoods. Maybe that's relevant because of this, and this.
It's like
You know, like-
recognizing habitat more than necessarily seeing a line.
Yeah, and just because I don't think we'll have a really hard time really on like a property by property level, like
Mhm.
mapping this stuff out.
Mhm.
Some of it, like, you know, I like thinking about some of the more fragmented landscapes in the area, like Cornwall is one that I always come back to, like the corridors exist on like wildly small scales, you know, like there's hedgerows in Cornwall that are what ties like blocks of timber together, and the suckers are this wide. But, and it's like to map all that stuff out, it's really tricky, but you can tell people like there's a way to like combine a map that has the big stuff and then also give them information to say like, you know, that hedgerow, don't brush hog that because every bobcat in this county is passing through there at some point, like that kind of thing. I think there's the combination of those two
Mhm.
things will be the way forward. It's a lot of work though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, like, who's doing that template, who's doing that work, and then.
Pile of
Students,
unpaid
right?
college students.
Yeah.
So many unpaid college students, you know,
Yeah.
just.
Who are thus far been pretty great for us.
Mhm.
Unpaid spunky college kids with a resume to fill out.
Sure.
I mean,
that.
that's
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
so my,
Beneficial all around.
everyone in
Yeah.
Middlebury, their entire careers are just based on the work the undergrads are doing. But yeah, no, I think that's all really good, and I think that, I think this sort of leads into, that town plan, and there's those forest blocks, and because I make the agendas, I was like, oh, we should probably consider that. And think about those blocks, and that was something that they were asking us about in that meeting too, or I was kind of setting up the stage of like, well, there are these goals, and we talked about those goals even when, Ken and Meredith were here last week or last month. About what is that town plan, what's in there now, what do we need to do, and then what can we do with that that would be useful, thinking towards that 2028 revision of that document, right? So we have time, but I think it's a really nice time for us to think about what do we want to get in there, and if we can get some like these maps and these pieces for homeowners that are some of our goals we were given when it was, you know, they were asked of us, you know, some of those things were educational for homeowners too. We could do some of those things, I think, in concert, that all get at this corridor idea too, that we could put that in the town plan, give us a planning commission, sort of a goal, like for a deliverable, like, now the project is as done as we're gonna get it right now, you know? It seems kind of like a nice package. We could do all those things.
Even what you're suggesting, could be one of the new strategies,
Mhm.
in the updated
Well, that's
town
great.
plan, although
Mhm.
we would hope to have it in place before 2028, but
Right.
still,
Well,
it could be a
right.
work in progress.
Mhm.
you
But
know.
one of the
Yeah.
line items would be done.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
town plan stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be a living project,
Yeah.
no matter what,
Right.
you know, but
Well,
2028 is a
but
great
it's
time
also-
to have something.
No, absolutely. I would also argue though, you know, this was a project that no one looked at all for 20 years. We're like, yeah, okay, let's do something with it now. What other things are we not doing for
Yeah.
20 years, right? So it's like, on some level, like we have to let things go. And like, what about that tree inventory that Randy last did? We haven't touched since Randy did it, right? So like things like that, I think that things come and go over time. It'd be nice to have like, we did something, and now we have our new thing, or, you know, or there's a new idea or a new map came out, and we can
Sure.
add it over time too, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really nice first meeting with them.
Mhm.
And I want to keep thinking about what we want to do and what student projects we could get and keep thinking, maybe we should look at the stuff from Sophie too.
Sophie, come back to that.
What,
Yeah, let's look at those and see what was in there, right, as her plan. That would be good to
We
look
could have
at.
that for next
Yeah,
March,
that's a
for
good-
next,
Yeah,
not to be like too project managery, but what were like next step action items from that we need to do, like that they're expecting from us? And when,
I think it's the map itself that, like, we knew this when we were concocting this project originally, like, we picked some really big, critical, like, obvious
Yeah.
places to do camera surveys and stuff, but we gotta expand that, and we've gotta find ways to get landowner permission to expand some of that work into the more densely populated areas already. I think, like, to me, that's the next thing. Is we were working, it's with the camera surveys, we're working tricky around property boundaries and stuff already. We have some landowners that own a lot of land that we can't camera trap on and so on. So like our map, to get to like the first stage of this map, I feel like that would be useful. We need some more locations. We need to get some landowner permission for that.
Mhm.
Maybe pick another 4 this year and do like 4 every year. Like we did last year or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and then for us, Michaela's on sabbatical still through next January. But we could think about student projects and where, what are those needs and what might those project goals be for them as well into the field, maybe taking on students in fall or the next spring, if there's something there.
Yeah.
Would you have the students would you pick the landowners and have it already ready for the students? And say,
I'm very
hey,
happy
like,
to.
I mean, we all can, but is that what you were talking, like, having them and then helping put the traps up like we did last time, kind of?
That's sort of what I was thinking. I think it would be interesting to have the students do, so like what my little experience with the students, and you guys will know more about this than I, was that they have a skill set that I very much didn't have coming into this, of being able to like use GIS programs to like identify this sort of stuff, whereas mine's all wandering around and looking at stuff. And we kind of come to different conclusions occasionally through that. It would be very interesting for the students to take a look at the same maps and think about where they would like to focus, independent of our input, my input, whatever. And have a combination of those two things and find some new locations. I think the kids would be into that too. It'd be kind of a fun stage of their project to like take a topo map of Bristol and identify some areas they'd be interested in surveying, while we also think our own and combine those two. That'd be kind of cool.
Okay, that all sounds really good. I think we should move on to the Timberlands project and then the town plan, because that all these things kind of, there's interrelated pieces, I think, and so I think we should just move on in terms of agenda item to that. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so let's continue this conversation in a roundabout way, but also a new conversation for the Timberlands, so we can move on. Yeah? For clerk stuff, I just want to make sure it's clear what we're doing. Okay, great. And the Jono knows since he's on Zoom. Cool, so let's talk now about the Timberlands multi-trail partnership pieces. I don't really know what you want to talk about or how you want to address this or begin, but there's a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
I have some things. Do others have things?
good things,
You have things?
couple things. Sounds like your things.
We all got a lot. I think we got some
You go,
things.
why don't you
Jamie
start?
has some things?
Why don't you think?
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and I can share maps and things if you want, if that's
Yeah,
useful.
that might be
Just, you know.
handy if you have them.
Yes.
Real handy.
This is
that'd
like
be
the
good.
map 1, map 2, map 3, or is this the text?
How about map 1?
Got it,
Yeah.
okay.
I wrote down some things because I was tired last month and I didn't get out what I wanted to get out fully, but I did, like Jono did. I wanted to applaud Ken and the team for working to keep the Ledges Trail accessible to the public. I think that's a really laudable thing. And for their vision to expand the public access to their private lands. And I appreciate that the team included our commission as a stakeholder and welcomed us to review the proposals, which I think are due tomorrow.
They are.
Yeah, the timing wasn't great.
That was, I know, that was one of the things.
That was kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
And we understand that they want to continue the traditional uses on the parcel, including some active logging at times, sustainably done, maple sugaring, and hunting, and want to enhance recreation at the parcel by installing those multiple use trails for hiking and mountain biking and snowshoeing. So I think it could provide some valuable assets to Bristol in terms of increasing tourism, ecotourism, and boosting the local economy, as they had mentioned in their pitch to us, as well as promoting outdoor recreational opportunities, which are good for everyone's health and well-being. And those are consistent with at least 2 of our town plan strategies that were assigned specifically to the Conservation Commission. So we are to work with adjacent towns, local groups, and state agencies and willing landowners to develop low environmental impact biking and hiking trails that promote access to natural resource areas. And we're also charged with striving to maintain and improve public access to the New Haven River, Baldwin Creek, and Bristol Pond. Maybe those are some same points that you were gonna bring up too. I didn't mean to step on you.
No,
there.
no, no, just one of them.
Yeah.
That's cool. I hadn't put those together. So now we have
access.
basically 3 out of this conversation, like 3 line items from this that are
That's why I want to send it out.
addressable
I was
now.
like,
Yeah.
Having said all that, I also believe very strongly that this parcel has very high significance conservation values that are important to our community, but also statewide and New England wide. There are rare, threatened, and endangered species on the property. There are uncommon plant and animal species, including peregrine falcons. And there are rare natural communities on the property. And as a Conservation Commission, we're also charged with at least 2 additional strategies in the town plan. And this project would appear, at least on the surface, to be at odds with those goals, depending upon how the trails are developed.
Yeah.
One charge is evaluating opportunities to conserve lands with high natural resource value. And the other is to consider river corridor conservation and protection measures to discourage additional infrastructure in the river corridor area as a way to decrease flood erosion losses and improve our community's flood resiliency. So those are the other, I feel like as a commission, we have charges that are balancing
Yeah.
values that this potential project could offer.
I feel like they addressed that fairly well in the RFP. Like, I feel like they were cognizant of that fact, right? Like throughout it, it says like kind of, well, it even addresses the current trail as, causing too much erosion. And they, they talk about, even in the final deliverable, I think, it's site analysis and assessment, including environmental considerations,
Yep.
soil, water, vegetation. So at least it's already kind of top of mind, or it seems top of mind, right? And I think as these RFPs come in, we'll be able to see based off of at least their site analysis, right? And their trail designs, how, I guess I'll just say cognizant again of this, that the people putting in the RFPs are really, those companies are like, are they coming from, an environmental kind of place or not? And hopefully that'll help kind of weed out.
Yeah, I did too. I appreciated the language that was in the RFP around land management and ecological stewardship. And I think there were phrases, as you mentioned, like an environmental impact assessment. But I also think that the conservation and protection measures for this project are not simply limited to erosion and preventing erosion. I think there are some stunning values in this property that could be at risk and maybe irreversibly so if the property were fragmented and split up with this trail network. And personally, I would like to see that a part of this design would include ecological assessment to understand in a better way, more comprehensive way, what those natural values are and where they are, so that the trail system can be avoiding them and
Mhm.
to the greatest extent possible, minimizing the impacts to those.
Can you go down to that next map?
Yeah.
Because I think that's pretty much exactly
This
speaks to what you're talking about, right? Like they literally split it up into these
Phases.
somewhat arbitrary. I mean, I get they put the sugaring and the logging. Like, what's number one? I don't know. Like they said what it was, but it seemed like kind of like if I'm putting in a bid and I said, okay, I can only work on number one, how am I actually taking into consideration all of the things that I'm supposed to?
Yeah,
So, and if you're building in a phases, like all these things have to connect. And so if they're only thinking of it like, all right, I'm in charge of number two, I'm gonna do number two. They might not realize, okay, well, on the other side of the mountain is number three, and you're gonna impact this in whatever way. So I think there does need to be a holistic approach to that.
that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, that if you're piecemealing it,
Yeah,
then you may never get to that holistic view of where are the corridors for wildlife and how can we, as much as possible.
it definitely does not
Avoid
say
those.
endangered in the RFP. I didn't even think about that, so.
That's not, yeah.
And maybe that's
good
something
catch.
that we can help identify, right? I
That-
mean, I think that it's our job to like bring that to them. Hey, these are the things that are here, please.
Consider them.
Yeah, exactly.
And my request would even be, would you hire a ecological firm to do an assessment? Or if that's not possible, if the Bristol Conservation Commission could find the funding for that, would you allow for that firm to access the property and have that assessment done?
Started thinking about right after the meeting was like, how can we make this as easy as possible?
Right, right?
Could we use?
Is that something we can use
conservation reserve
conservation?
funds?
I know.
I mean, no
That was
matter
my
what,
It's
thought.
right,
about property.
That was my
Right?
thought.
Might not be cheap. but it
Of
would be-
course,
There's
yeah.
also, I mean, like, we eat a stock.
Conservation.
I mean, this is
Yeah,
bird
birds.
related.
Bird related.
I mean,
What is the cost you think with that? Would be hundreds, thousands, 10,000s? I have no concept of what that would cost.
I
What do you think? What do you
asked
imagine?
Mark Lappin what approximate cost it would be, and I didn't hear back in time.
Okay,
But there are several other firms like Arrowwood Environmental that we could ask, what would, for a 2,000 acre property, what would be the approximate cost of a range.
Okay.
And of course, the Conservation Reserve Fund expenditures would be not our decision, but the
Of
select
course,
board,
yeah.
so we'd have to make a good pitch for that, but I think we
Right.
could.
I think because it's for property, like if it's about property, like if it was education, if it was, then we couldn't use it for that, right? Like it is specific to easements and
It's
conservation of land. right?
Conservation values for the town, so.
Right, I have to
um,
look at it, but I can't use my computer because
And
you're
it's a-
all looking at my
What are you
computer.
looking at?
But it's in that PDF on our
Yes,
site.
yeah,
You know, I'm
it's
just
fairly
wondering.
general language.
Oh, it didn't change. Beautiful. I can't use my computer. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Conservation Reserve Fund information. At town meeting day, I have this open in my lap, just waiting. Never came.
Never came up.
I was waiting though. Okay, the Conservation Reserve Fund expended by the select board for the purpose of land acquisition, conservation easements and or interest in property that achieve the Bristol Town Plan's conservation objectives.
I think the latter phrase would
The
cover it.
last
Totally.
phrase, yeah.
And as to expenditures from the Conservation Reserve Fund on private parcels, there is a precedent there. We have used Conservation Reserve Fund dollars on private parcels before that we're proceeding toward a conservation objective.
Yeah.
So,
Like this is such a public facing project too,
Yeah.
right? Like,
The biggest chunk of publicly accessible ground in the town.
Yeah.
Well, it's not, but it's one of the two, you know,
And
what would be a better use of that money on this?
totally.
Okay,
Is like this, it's gonna be tough. I think so I'm, many know, like, on the board with backcountry hunters and anglers, and we're currently going through this exact process with a couple of different state and Forest Service land projects, Telephone Gap being the big one. And it's a really hard deal talking to people in the trail development world about impacts on wildlife. And I'm thinking wildlife in particular. There's a lot of different things, consider erosion being one of the more obvious ones, but it changes everything. Like you have year-round pressure in these places, it moves critters around, it changes their patterns, it's significant, and there's no two ways about it, like, period. How you weigh that with people's desire and right and need to recreate outside is a complicated thing. But it will, that's gonna be a tough conversation.
I think whatever we might end up doing relating to this whole project, based on their timeline, we'd have to phase in what our suggestions would be in any grant funding or use of the Conservation Reserve Fund, to sort of stay a little bit ahead, maybe, of what their plans are. And I can imagine an overlay of, wildlife corridor aspects to consider, endangered species, whatever could be found out. So then it's there for them to consider. So I think everyone has outlined, starting with Kristen, how a 2,000 acre parcel really has to be looked at from so many perspectives. And I think, as Matt's kind of pointing out, nobody speaks for the wildlife, nobody speaks for the plants, except really our commission to a large degree. And we have to be, a voice of sensibility, to appeal to people's caring nature. And I think we have a way to do that. But it's not easy, especially when you go up against, people that have strong interest in development, as you experienced, Matt, in the planning meeting board, and they've already probably got a lot of ideas. They're way ahead. So to kind of come in on the side and offer up that information, I think they're open to it. The principals involved are good people, so I think that's helpful.
Do we have a public comment?
I'm just here to say what I've already heard from you folks. I was going to suggest that perhaps the Conservation Commission would be interested in connecting with some state agencies. I talked to a DEC guy today, Josh, at 5:30, and he was very excited about providing connections for talking about with commission people about what's really going on in the sensitive community area. And I thought it might be something to consider, is to take, for the group to take a particular part of the 2,000 acres for rare and endangered species or whatever, and look into it and then see what the state has to say about it. And then have that, because I thought in the presentation that I saw the video of the meeting with Ken and
Porter Knight.
Porter, thank
Right.
you.
And Meredith McFarland.
That they were leaving out the preparation or the work to look at what's already here before they start drawing lines this way and that way, because they had a line on 7, for instance, that was that Porter mentioned was going above above the private land ownership, and not really at 7. It's right into the Nature Conservancy land, and I have a few acres below number 7, but that blue line goes right through. So I think that this kind of information would be helpful to look at. And the next meeting with the timberland people is, here's what we found about what's really going on here. And then maybe give it to the consulting group for how to deal with it. And I thought it'd be useful for the town to have some idea of what's really going on. You can't identify what some of these rare populations are, but you can certainly locate them. And I think that would, like 4, for instance, is by the Tillerman, and that's right next to Beaver Brook. It's a class 2 wetland, both sides of that blue line by 4 there. How close does the state recommend that you go with a trail by a class 2 wetland? And up by the left, the west side of 2 is right into a osprey nesting area. Sandhill cranes hang out in that to the west of 2. And so I think this is something that we ought to have an understanding of before another conversation about where the line should go.
I remember we were working with Zapata Courage when she was thinking about the beaver meadows, and in those conversations, we were also at that time considering it was Porter with the Bristol Town Network was thinking, what if they did a spur somehow into the beaver meadows? And we talked about that quite a bit about 5 years ago with Zapata, and we did a walk through there. And she had said that a primitive hiking trail is not incompatible with even the highest classification of protection for wetlands in the state. That's a primitive hiking trail,
Hiking
right?
trail.
And that wouldn't be the banked bike paths that they were considering at some point during the meeting, right? So there could be primitive hiking trails, I think, according to the state and according to where we're at with conservation, but
Well,
I don't
honestly,
know about that level of development, you
It
know.
looked like 4 was the one they were gonna develop the most, because zone 4 is dual direction trail leading from the existing dirt road to the multi-use connector in zone 2. Trail should be beginner friendly for mountain biking, provide uphill access to the trails in zone 4. Access
Those
point for the dirt
There
anything
road,
are
right? It's
pretty
like the
significant
main-
roads in
Yeah,
there
all
currently,
the-
to be fair. I think that's probably their thinking is that
Yeah.
the Johnson logging roads across Beaver Brook and both of those spots go on to very significant roads.
Well, all the red lines are the machine
Existing.
built, the machine
Right.
built
Yeah, the solid
multi-use.
red.
So the solid red, not the dotted red. So that's a lot of things on the north side of this parcel.
Right, so I'm not sure what the primitive trail would be, but I'm looking at the hiking trail, those little
I think
black
it's just,
lines.
I think it's just the black.
Right,
lines.
but it's those other ones, and I don't know if those are on top of already roads that
think
are
they
up
are.
there. I don't know what those are, but that would be something to think about.
At least this and this are.
When you say this, could you verbalize that for John?
Like by the number 4,
Yeah, one's just south of 4 and the one just north of 4.
yeah.
The red lines, you mean?
Well,
And, you
and
know,
the blue line.
The blue line
the
over
blue
4.
line, up on number 2 as well, right? Al?
Yeah, yeah.
Cause that's where
The
we've
road.
been, like hiking and stuff.
right, yeah.
That's very much a road.
There, the fact that you may get less 4-wheeler use ripping those roads up might be a positive of all this, to be fair. I think this is not including 4-wheeler traffic would be off limits, right?
Yeah.
Currently, it's kind of a wild west on a couple of those roads, but,
It seems like to me that we could start to think about a checklist. And it's great that Randy's at the meeting here. Decide what, it's already been talked about, what's important. So let's say maybe Matt feels pretty good about pursuing some discussion about the wildlife corridors. Randy might want to look into, as he's already made a call to DEC, about some of the aspects he was talking about. I guess in general, again, looking at their timeline of the detailed design, at least we have something to consider now. And my suggestion of phasing it in with 1 and 2, that's a through line along the ledges there. And if these roads already pretty much exist as logging roads, they're probably not going to want to do a whole lot of extra work, but I think they could do workarounds, as Kristen points out, with some pretty significant areas that should need some protection, and maybe Matt's conversation about the wildlife corridors and so on. So they could deviate. But anyway, if we got back to their committee and said, hey, would you welcome a chance to look at this a little bit more in depth if we can figure out some resources and possibly some funding, because it's early stages now, and then also suggest that maybe it could be phased over the next 3 years, 26, 27, and 28, because it's going to take a little bit to get the ducks in a row.
Well, I think they were gonna start, they're getting all the applications for designing were due tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So I think soon,
Yeah,
right?
soon.
Cause like, once they start designing where they think the trail should be and they've spent money on it, they're not gonna wanna do a ton to deviate
Exactly.
from that.
Yeah,
So it seems like now would be the moment to go to them and be like, here is an option.
Yeah.
Maybe we just,
want help
maybe we
funding
just
it.
go and say, would you be open to, if we could find the funding for it, would you be open to getting like us helping you
Ecological.
hire a ecological consultant to take a look at this? And the deal is, I'm glad you bring up the point about the state information and weighing in on this too. I mean, the Fish and Wildlife has leaned really hard into this small private land like connectivity and ecology question lately. Andrea Shortsleeve's the new commissioner. That's what she does. That is her area, is like connectivity on small parcels. And like orchestrating development within that. And there are people at Fish and Wildlife who would have information, be interested to talk to for sure.
So
And free.
I think we might be making a few like assumptions, like putting the cart in front of the horse, right? So all this stuff is due tomorrow, but
What's due tomorrow? I'm
The
the,
designs.
the RFP
What is an
respondents.
RFP?
Request
Sorry.
request for proposal.
So they,
Okay.
so they put out this
They
document
already
to
put it out.
whoever,
Okay.
whenever, right? It was like pretty much right after our call. People who are architects or whatever that do this kind of stuff, so they scour the internet and find these RFPs, and then they have people, was what I used to do, is like put together the proposals for your company, and then you put it out and you just hope for the best, right? You
Okay.
just kind of spray and pray with that kind of thing, right? In general. So ideally, a lot of people want to do this, and they'll get, I don't know, 10, 15,
4,
20.
5,
Yeah,
yeah.
no. Realistically, it's gonna be 3 to 5.
And people
Respondents,
and
right?
people just submit those for free as like, they're
Correct.
like
That-
auditioning.
That is, that, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
The cost, and it even says the cost is on them. You're putting an investment in,
Okay.
right, and you're gambling on
Okay.
getting the project, right? And so that was one of my questions, is this says at the bottom of the RFP that Mountain Bike Bristol looks forward to receiving your proposal. I was not clear until reading this, the relationship between Mountain Bike Bristol and A. Johnson and this entire project. And then also like, where do we fit into that, right? In like a perfect world in my mind, they get all these things tomorrow and they share them with us. Obviously, it would have to be offline because sensitive information, but that then we could be like, hey, you know, because ideally, right, they put in the like scope of work or whatever that they do need to have a site analysis and assessment with environmental considerations, Act 250, right? So we don't know, like maybe the architecture firm says like, hey, we have these guys that we work with all the time that go in and do this assessment, so that's who we're gonna use, and we're like, sweet, that's perfect, we don't have to pay for it, you know what I mean? Like we approve of these guys. But we don't really know until we get those respondents and read them. So I feel like we're making a little bit of an assumption that they're not gonna care, they're not gonna do this, and they just wanna blast through. We don't know, you know, maybe that is true, right? And maybe it is kind of more of a battle, but also maybe you read 3 of them and one of them is like the blast through and one of them is like the we care. And we try to say, hey guys, like the we care people, can we do that? But if they're like hundreds of thousands of dollars more, you know, they're gonna still go to bottom line. But I feel like if we're able to get in on those conversations and read the RFP respondents stuff and have a conversation with them at that point in time, we'll have a lot more insight into who these companies are, what their frame of mind is in picking these companies, and then what we need to do to support our agenda within that project. That's my 2 cents on that.
Okay, so what do we do and how do we do it and who's doing it?
I
Well,
think we need to reach it back out to Ken
Yeah,
and Porter, right?
And I think Sam, they said, was the person, right?
That's
Sam?
mountain bike.
Yeah.
Is that who, I don't know who Sam is.
Sam
The-
more, yes, because Chris,
I think
I
so.
think, and Sam are
Oh,
married, and they
Cool
own
Motion.
Cool Motion Sports.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
nobody came that at that
They
meeting.
didn't come to
They
the February meeting though, right? I
No.
don't
I don't
think.
think so.
I
Yeah,
thought there was the
so-
mention that Sam was running the show somehow, I think.
That relationship is like, I
It
don't
might
know
be
how to,
like the-
how to
like-
broach that.
No, I think we start with the landowner. I think we
Okay.
start with Ken. And, and ask if we can be a part of the discussions as they review the
I thought they
proposals.
mentioned it.
Yeah, they did
Yes,
say
I-
that they would like, for us to do that.
But we
I
also
asked-
said we would discuss at this meeting what our
Yeah.
Thoughts were,
thoughts were.
yeah.
So I
It's
think,
not gonna be a shock to them that we then.
yeah, if you read that
really-
email,
Actually, we really
she
wanna make
called me
sure
out.
that-
She
hard.
called you
If
out there, and then I
possible,
guess, yes,
we do.
Samantha, but just
Okay,
the,
good.
the mountain biker, you
I
said,
see.
is CC'd. And then I was asked after this meeting by the Addy Indy, they wanted to speak with the major players, and I didn't know who they were, so I asked Porter, and Porter had me connect the Addy Indy with Sam and Ken.
Okay.
But maybe she goes by Samantha. I'm a little confused right now, but yeah.
So when I
Oh.
read that,
Does it say-
Morrissey?
Yeah, so Chris, that's his name.
Yes,
Yeah, Chris and Sam, I think, are
Cool
together.
motion.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, they did.
Okay,
And-
when I read that email, I wasn't clear on if she meant she wanted me to look at
I thought it
the
was,
RFP
I thought it was
before
after
it
the
goes out, or
14th.
if it's the
Yeah.
respondents. I wasn't sure. If
I
it's the
wasn't sure
respondents.
either. I thought it was the
sweet.
response, I thought it was after the 14th, but you're right, we should be clarified.
The last thing, second to last thing, but on this point, a lot of RFPs have a, we will make a decision by date, and they don't. So that would be interesting to know if they have something in mind that's a hard deadline that they're trying to get back to these respondents,
Mm,
of who they selected or not. Well, it's clearly not a hard deadline because it's not in there, right? But internally, if they have some timeline they're working towards, because then we would need to work within that.
You said second to last.
Second to last. Second
That's
to
right, that was penultimate.
Sorry. I know, the only other thing, like reading through this, and you mentioned it too, and I just don't understand how it exactly would work, but we're talking about this multi-use property and we put hunting in there. I don't really understand how hunter safety and year-round human foot traffic coincide.
Coincide.
Yeah,
That was
We can
my
answer that.
question, I was.
I mean,
code.
So we were
Yeah,
just having the same conversation about the Moncton Town Forest, and the reality is that like intense hunting pressure happens for 18 days a year in Vermont. Those days are in November. That's rifle hunting season.
right, because you
know,
still have bow and
You have bow,
bear, and I mean, you have.
right, but
the
like
season
real like
is-
hunting pressure, like
Okay.
vast majority of hunters are in the woods during rifle deer
Yeah,
season.
fair.
Not the high point in other recreation, like that's like, it's mid-November. It's not like, if this was July, it would probably be a scarier thing. I totally understand people's concerns when it comes to like having people running around with guns near their hiking trails. I get it. Statistically, it's very safe, and this sort of thing happens all over the place. Accidents are wildly rare, but there's conflict that comes from it, and there's no two ways about the fact that like there are going to be people with concerns about like walking their dogs and being out there while hunting's going on. The way this was handled in Heinsberg is to close the place for other recreation during rifle deer season. And I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. It's 18 days, and it's like you have the other thing that's really important to note here, and Ken would understand this very well, is that you need to take some deer off of those mountains like every year.
Yeah,
That is an area with a very high deer density, already very hard to regenerate white oak up there. It's like they're getting, especially the yarding areas, of which this area holds several. Cedars and hemlocks get browsed down to nothing. So harvesting some deer from the hogbacks is an important ecological part of the puzzle. And so I would be perfectly into the idea of proposing that we follow the Heinsberg Town Forest model and just close the place to mountain biking and hiking during those two change weeks.
Yeah.
More than anything, I don't like people aren't, well, not on wood. It doesn't happen like accidents are very, very rare, but it's also like as a hunter, it kind of stinks to be up there knowing that people are worried about it and this, that, and the other
Well,
thing. Like nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable and nobody wants to feel unsafe. And I think the best way for this to exist in a conflict-free manner is to set that 2 weeks aside and
I think that's fair.
say,
So the first thing that came to my mind actually wasn't even rifle, it was bow and peepers, right? So like I just get random arrows on my property, right? And I'm like, I'm
Can
glad
you
I wasn't
translate
out there.
that for, what's a bow?
Leaf
peepers.
Oh.
oh, people hunting very little frogs.
No, the conflict between out-of-staters coming to look at the pretty leaves and other people wanting to kill
Yeah.
things with bows and arrows, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's a quiet, right? You hear a rifle, you go, somebody's over there, I'm gonna not be over there, right? But like, you see an arrow come through. Now, I don't know, again, like the popularity of it, but the season is earlier, right? The season
Yep.
is during peaking season.
And there is some bow hunting pressure there,
Yeah.
certainly, there's folks that bow hunt it.
So, you know, again, it's just more of a hunter safety thing than, because people aren't hiking in blaze orange, right? Like,
Well, most people around here know in November too.
Oh, if you
I'm not
shoot
talking
somebody
about,
by
I'm not
mistake
talking
with a
about people
bow,
around here though, that's
Right.
what I mean.
I mean,
That's
you
my
have
thing.
screwed up.
I haven't really
Yeah.
caught any
Yeah,
articles
we'll
lately of
difference.
somebody, you know, being injured, you know, by a bow hunter.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's a comfort thing more than it's an actual, like, even guns, like, accidents are very rare, but nobody's like accidentally getting shot with a bow.
Yeah.
It's just like, to be 20 yards from somebody and mistaken for a deer is
Right.
Yeah, that's
wildly
fair.
unlikely
Really
proposition.
irresponsible.
But yeah,
Yeah.
now that I say that, but there is a conflict potential there. But I guess my answer to that would also be that just like that's a paradigm that exists all over the country all the time, especially in areas like more suburban parts of New England,
Yeah.
where there's a ton of bow hunting pressure. People are out in the woods. You know, like we were just having a meeting talking about this for the Moncton Town Forest, and the point I was trying to make there is like, this has all been happening on this property all along, you know, and it's just now if you introduce a whole lot more hiking pressure,
Right.
I can see that, you know, but it just people get by with this stuff without much conflict all over the place, and bow hunters are not right next to the trails.
Yeah.
They're generally not seeable, you know, like, you know, you're up in a tree in camouflage most of the time. I just don't think it's really going to be that big an issue.
Yeah, I think you're right about.
I don't know if it's proper for me to act as a facilitator, but thinking that we're about 40 minutes away, if we were to stay on time, we could really go on and talk about this, I'm sure, for a good, healthy amount of time. But looking at the agenda,
Thank you, Vice Chair
Yeah,
Jono.
right, sorry, my bad.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I'll just mention-
The always timely John O. Chapin.
Can I mention two brief
But
things?
maybe just to kind of do a quick little sum up of some people that might want to do a little bit of reaching out back to the committee, and I think it's just really fortunate that Randy's here, because you know, we could see if we could keep in touch with him and vice versa, because I think the timeline, they're putting these RFPs out, but there's time that you can work up in there in the woods, and right now is probably a time nobody wants to be working in the woods. It's soft, and it's mud season and so on. So I think they are hoping to line this up so it would be next in 2026, probably by maybe May, June, somewhere in there. What do you think, Matt? How do things kind of shape up by that time?
Jenna, when you're talking to Matt, are you referring to Alex Smith, who is shown next to you?
Alex, my mistake. I think he looks so
Don't
similar
mind it,
to.
Josh.
Yeah. There you go. He looks similar to somebody that I know as Matt. I probably made this mistake before.
Right, well,
Sorry, my apologies, Alex.
Kristen had a couple points too. What were your
Two
points?
really quick points. They are advertising an informational meeting about this Timberlands project at Holly Hall, March 25th at 6:30, if anyone's interested. And there's also a survey link
Yeah.
to express your opinion about the project.
Great.
Okay, so in terms of next steps, who's doing what? And what's happening?
Might we have our ducks in a row as far as a consultant if they were willing to partake, and maybe that process might take a minute, so maybe that should be step number one, is to see if we have funding and see if we have somebody that would take the gig should that come up.
I can volunteer to get availability and estimates for an ecological assessment.
And that'd be a
Okay.
good first step, whether
That's
it
awesome.
comes to that or not, we're
Yeah.
good to like we have somebody. we can-
And Roger, could you connect with them and say that you want to be the person that connects, and then you could make sure you get these documents that you want? and
Yeah.
You can send them to us or look at them or whatever it is.
I can try. I am going out of town for the next 2 weeks for funeral stuff, so
Oh,
it's a bit bad timing, but I can ping them and see at least what their timeline is.
okay.
If it conflicts too much, then
If you need a backup, I can be
Yeah,
your backup.
okay,
Yeah.
Would anybody like to be a liaison that would sit in with their committee and then that would be a good contact and maybe report back, because right now it seems like we're going to be channeling with them quite a bit over the next year, if not more than this first year and follow-up years.
Is that what Rogers?
Did you mention that they were? or-
Meredith mentioned in
Offering
her
to be-
email that she believed he offered that in
She
the
did
meeting.
believe that, yeah.
She says,
I mean, I feel
I
like I
can make her
remember
believe
that.
her reality, I
I feel like you
suppose.
did say that.
I feel like I said
You
something
did.
along those lines, yes.
There's
Yeah, that's
there's an
cool.
invitation for Meredith for you to be the point person, but I said she might be wrong if you didn't.
Yeah, I'm down with that, and we need to define point person, I guess, I'm not sure what the responsibilities are there, but I think,
Go to a
um,
meeting and
yeah.
then go back and tell us,
yeah,
and come to our meetings and go back and tell them.
yeah, I can
The
liaise.
messenger, everybody loves the messenger.
I know.
Never get shot.
Maybe though. if
When
you're
both
the
things
forest,
are what people are
Maybe
we
if
don't
both-
know.
Just don't get too
We
close,
don't
wear your
know.
glasses. Yeah, I just need to know, I need contact people, I guess, I'm not super familiar with everybody, so that'll work.
Yes. Okay, wait, did you get that email from Meredith that mentioned you or not?
I got, yeah, you forwarded it. I
Then-
But
got
you
your
weren't on the
forwarded.
email. Oh, I'm so confused. Okay, wait, I see. So you were mentioned, but you weren't actually emailed it.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Okay, so it seems to me as though this email then went to the rec director, me, Porter, and Samantha Morrissey.
So, yeah, Samantha seems like somebody important for me to
Yeah.
know if I'm gonna do this thing.
Right, and
Well,
then
really,
Ken
the
isn't even
Ken is the
on there.
landowner.
Well, yeah,
Ken's
yeah,
the
and Ken, no, I know.
landowner.
It's just if Samantha's running, if she's the bike person, sorry,
Mhm.
recording, then they're receiving the RFPs,
Right, because RPs are going
Which-
to the biking group, not
Right.
to Ken.
which I thought was weird, but yes, that's what's on.
It's a good point.
That's what's on the thing.
Well, they've
Is-
got to go to somebody. I'm sure that they're going to
No, I
be a
didn't say
group
her
that
name.
will probably review all of
It's
them.
a voice, or Bristol Bike. I can't remember, I have. pulled up, but-
Mountain Bike Bristol looks forward to receiving a
Okay.
proposal and partnering. It says contact Seth Bet for questions.
So Seth,
I don't
sounds
know who
like
that
Seth
is.
is the point person,
Yeah,
It does.
because he is on the proposal, that's his contact, so.
yeah. Is that,
Yeah, because I think.
So
their
I
email
imagine
is-
So,
it's,
yeah,
it's.
I think that's right.
It's,
Okay.
it's Morrissey's and Beck.
Yeah.
As the trail proprietors.
And is Meredith also part of this, or she just was here because she
Well,
knows
Meredith,
us? I was, but what was that relationship? there?
Meredith is involved with Cool Motion
I
Sports
see, okay,
in many different hats.
I see, okay.
As we have our mountain bike program, Little Rippers,
Mhm.
and then she's involved with Cool Motion Sports, and we use them as a resource to the rec department.
Okay.
So it's all threaded together.
Okay,
I'll just clarify that I will first ask Ken
that sounds
if
great.
he
Mhm.
would be willing to have us solicit estimates for an ecological assessment, and if he's okay with
Yeah,
that, then I will
that's
proceed.
smart, yeah,
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah, that's we all, I guess I've sort of lost track of this occasionally in this conversation too, that this isn't it's private land.
Yeah.
And we gotta,
Yes.
Right.
we're talking about it a little bit like this is a public land project,
Yeah,
but it ain't.
exactly.
And
Because he can do
Ken's
whatever he
wishes are, hey, Bola.
But
Within the law.
Listen to
Yeah,
Within the
us.
law, within the state, if there's endangered species.
yeah,
Right.
there's still 250, right? Whatever
Yeah.
the Act 250 is, that you have to be within those parameters. But at the end of the day, he came to us
Mhm.
wanting.
Advised
it
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
so.
They clearly asked for our participation. It was very
Yeah.
straightforward. So we're just responding and maybe elaborating.
Great, and then so you'll send that to Ken and then see where that leads, and then you're going to contact these people, and if you need emails, you can
Yeah.
ask me if you need anything, and we can get you liaising. Sound
Yes.
good? And getting whatever those are, the RFPs.
Yeah.
The Ps, he's gonna review the
I'll
Ps.
get the Ps, yeah.
You get those, and then you can
Yeah.
loop us in.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great with a plan. Everyone satisfied with that plan?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now let's try to move on to, the town plan. just considering those steps and progress, because I think these things we've just been talking about tie in different ways, but in a lot of the things that we were asked with, and I think the last meeting, there have been some questions about, well, is it our place? And is this what the Conservation Commission should be doing or not? And what's our role here? And so I thought it'd be interesting for us to go and look at those. And so there's the Excel file I sent that has specific goals. Maybe I'll share that one. There's also the town plan itself. And that one, I just thought it would be good to make sure everyone in the commission has seen that and has a copy of that so that, so you know what those forest blocks are, for example, things like that, right?
So that town plan was 169 pages long.
Oh, no,
and
you're
I-
just supposed to look
this
at the
Where's
maps.
the section? Just
There's the natural resources section, I
Okay.
think.
so like, is there a spot
There's a
in here that
chapter.
we're kind of like responsible?
Go to
for?
pages 120, 129, 30, 131. There's a listing, it's basically what Carolyn has condensed here in the short list.
Yes, and
Oh.
this was sent by the planning commission to us as well.
These are all the strategies that have been assigned to us, sometimes to other committees as well, like the planning commission or the select board, but
Okay, perfect.
sometimes to us alone.
So I was browsing it. Oh, this is fairly dense.
Mhm.
Yeah. I sent this, you may not have been on the commission last time I sent it. It was like, everyone knows this document.
I didn't memorize it yet.
I'd like to zoom in because I don't know if we can read that.
Is the idea that we should be updating our progress?
I don't know what we
Kind
should
of.
do exactly. I just thought that we were talking about this so much recently. I just thought it was something we should consider.
Mhm.
That we do have some of these things. And I think at some point early on, when we were sent this by Kevin Hansen, he was asking us to fill in these percent completes,
Mhm.
like every quarter. And then
Yeah, I
after about a
remember.
year, he stopped asking for that.
Yeah,
I don't know if we were the only commission that bothered, or if he just was distracted or didn't see the use, but we were asked to check in on this quite a bit, and then we haven't really looked at it recently. I thought it'd be good to just remind ourselves what's out there.
Yeah, I remember when last we were talking about this, finding it kind of hard to parse out what we were doing, and like it's almost like a little percentage of a bunch of these things, you know,
Mhm.
like.
And so
We're
it's
not
never
like
done, right?
identifying significant scenic spots, right? But we're like involved with a variety of projects that.
Or scenic.
You know? So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how to place a
And some of
percentage on
that, like the work is never done.
Yeah, like,
So
we've got
it's
the
just like,
scenic
oh,
spots. figured
all
out.
the scenic spots that are.
Everything else is ugly.
Don't look at anything. We've looked at it all. I just thought there was a few things. I thought Helen had some points that she was concerned about the direction the commission was in and wanted to make sure we were aligning our goals with the things that we were supposed to be aligning them with. So I thought we
I
could just
think
look at it.
it came up particularly with the Seth Hill
Mhm.
project, right? And she was like,
That's
why are we even being asked about this property? Because it's
yeah.
not in Bristol,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But yeah, there's a few things we've mentioned already about both the Timberlands project, like what Kristen, you said, where you listed, like, these are things we're definitely.
those are-
there's
were these.
4 of these, yeah. And then as well with reaching out to landowners, like Alex was saying as well, and thinking about mapping and how we can think about wildlife. And so I think that we feel like we're on track doing a lot of these sorts of things. I wouldn't say that we haven't done as much with river corridor things in the last, since COVID pretty much, because so many people that were anglers have left the commission, have retired from the
True.
commission. So I think we're doing less than we used to, but we are
But-
doing a lot of other things.
With
which is
regard
good.
to river corridors, there is the Flood Safety Act that passed in the legislature last year that has now said that the state will take over jurisdiction of all river corridors
Oh,
by 2028. And so
so we're off the hook.
that, so we can say check. We can say check. Done.
It's an interesting question how Seth Hill does factor in this. I think we should have a hand in it. It's town property.
Right.
And but yeah, what of these?
I guess management plans, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
right, yeah.
On town properties. So I guess that would count, that would fall
Yeah.
under that purview. And just so everyone knows, I am starting to draft up a management plan for Suffield,
Awesome.
Thank you.
just because we,
So
Did you get those
discussion last time.
documents from David Brin?
yes,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
that's been helpful.
I still don't understand that property, like the relationship,
There's a water source.
like
Bristol at one point.
as far as our,
Purview, or?
yeah, like how does it fit in to where and?
I think you could call it a town property, and we are charged with developing a management plan to minimize.
So it's part of the town?
Yeah, the town owns the land though, it's in,
Right.
because it was the
Okay.
water, it was the water
And
source.
Randy,
for-
you worked on Seth Hill things a little bit a while
Just a
ago.
very little, yeah.
Mhm.
And we should, steward that property, especially in terms of its use, because we have somebody who rents that property to Sugar.
Mm.
And then we have David doing his ecology
Mhm.
project on there, and there are points of contention between the two folks that use that property. So,
And I
Yeah.
felt, that was my big
And
learning lesson
I
from
thought-
that discussion,
yeah.
is like, if we had a management plan,
Mhm.
we could have consulted the management plan to
Right.
help resolve
Right.
that
Right,
discrepancy.
Right.
That is why we
Right.
have those things.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something, this kind of thing comes up.
Right, as is with that though, I thought that you made a really good point about what is, how complicit is the town, and if we undo what was done and the grant had paid for that, and Valerie had approved that that work should go in, what is that liability almost, or what is our role in
Exposure.
undoing grant work that had been done? And I don't have
Yeah.
any concept of what that would look like. We were not asked about it, we were only informed the work would be done.
right.
Valerie had approved that and sent out a
And the select board
congratulations. And the
approved it,
select board too, okay. We were not asked to be part of that initial conversation.
Yeah.
So it's really, yeah, it's hard to know what our role is there, I
Yeah.
think. But I just wanted to show this and think about it, and I wanted, as I said, pass around the town plan. And there's a special part with the forest blocks, I thought is really interesting, some of the wildlife connectivity, things like that, right? Or there's some of that's older, and thinking about, or maybe people are newer on the commission and want to think about what they might want to do, or have like a spark of like, oh, I just saw this cool thing. We could update this. We have 3 years to get it done.
Which, by the way, the hogback is a forest block of highest priority.
Is it really? Oh, good catch. See, this is what we should revisit.
That was the
Yeah.
first big arrow on the wildlife
Mhm.
connectivity map, not
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Mhm.
Critters like the hogback. That's what that map said.
So yeah, so I just thought that was good to revisit that, yeah. Okay, so anyhow, let's put into our next agenda item about parks. We have several things to talk about parks. Gosh, this meeting's gonna go long, I think, unfortunately. We'll fly through the end.
We'll talk really fast.
We'll talk really fast towards the
Super
end.
fast.
I think E through I are very quick. So let's think about parks. Aiden, you also want to add in a knotweed discussion
Well,
on the
we don't
sycamore.
have to.
No, it's
I
fine.
watched all the videos,
I
so
know,
we
me
have to
too.
talk about
Just,
it. while it's-
okay.
Oh my gosh.
Where do you wanna start? Where do you wanna start? Just.
Well, okay, do you want to start with South Hill? We just start with South Hill. So with South Hill field trip planning. Want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Do you want, should we want to do a field trip in spring? I figure it's almost spring. So we should figure that out. Is there like a month we want to do? Do we want to do that as our meeting?
Do it when it's not muddy.
Right, that's true. We
Because
went
it's gonna
there.
it's gonna be draining.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
said
We have a-
spring, but maybe we don't.
June.
You check the erosion.
True.
Mhm.
Well,
Wear your mud boots.
let's balance the two, yeah, like bring your muck boots and be prepared, but not. like,
Okay,
sinking
so-
into it.
I can ask David Brin, hey, we'd like to do this. Will we do that as our Thursday meeting? I'm thinking not, because we have
Probably
so much
not.
to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, so I can reach out to him if we want, because I said I would do that a while ago. I can ask him, and we're thinking, like, do you want to do a Thursday? But it's just not our normal Thursday. Would that be an easy time to do that? Can we get out to Lincoln at 6-ish in May or June?
Or
something like
5-ish,
that?
Yeah,
because there's more daylight.
yeah, let's do it with more daylight, and, yeah. That'd be great.
Okay, so I'll ask him about 5-ish on a Thursday.
In May or late May or June.
Okay. In May, yeah, late May or June. And we'll just see what he comes back with and see if we can start, and once I get a couple dates, I could pop it back to everyone, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Great, I just don't wanna forget about that.
Yeah.
Okay, great, okay, so then Saunders River, there was a sampling request.
Yes, Matt Witten of the Addison County Riverwatch Collaborative. They're doing some buffer plantings and they have done this in the past. Bye, Randy.
Thank you for
Thank you for
coming.
Thank you for coming.
It was nice seeing you.
They wanted, they want to harvest the willows at the Saunders River access site in order to plant them at a new site. They've done this before. The willow comes right back. It's,
Come back more
This is
Yeah.
Chevy's area.
so, if we were all okay with that, I would tell them, yeah, go for it. And they're gonna do that like next week or the week after, if we said, okay.
Do we need to vote on that, or we just gonna say that's fine?
I think we have
Any
a
objections?
consensus.
Consensus seems to think that's fine.
I'll let Matt know. Pruning?
What's that? Pruning, thank you, I lost my place. Pruning, did pruning happen, Jono? Where are you at with pruning?
Pruning hasn't happened, but we have some great weather, and I wanted to just put it out there that Tuesday and Wednesday, some nice comfortable temperatures. I'm not sure who is interested. Just thinking I would bring it up at the meeting, and then from there, available dates which work best for most people.
You're talking next Tuesday, Wednesday?
Yes,
Okay,
I thought I'd steer away from a weekend, but I won't be able to do it Thursday. But I think we have a good window next week if that appeals to people.
I could be out there to help depending on the time of day.
How about later in the day? Because we do
Try
have
harder.
daylight in our favor.
Yeah, Tuesday, I can do Wednesday. But
Tuesday?
So they could
would
entertain
work,
each other.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask and see if they could, yes.
So
Yeah,
Nancy
Tuesday morning.
and Zaylee, it sounds like that's great. And just because Helen has been involved, I'll include her on the email as well as everyone else, in case things open up. But what would you think? 5 o'clock is a good time?
Oh, yeah, that'd be fine with me. Yeah.
Oh, that's later than I thought, okay.
Yeah,
5
I was
p.m.
expecting morning,
Yeah,
but
right?
5
Would
o'clock's
you?
fine.
Well, I mean, we could go earlier. How about 4 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm free the whole day.
yeah, all of that doesn't matter. Yeah, I just wanted
All
to
right,
work it around
I
nap
will-
time, which is like noon.
I'll
so.
send out an email within the next day, probably tomorrow, and we'll figure out a time, maybe edging towards 3.
Cool.
Great,
Sounds
thank you
good.
so much.
Cool. Well, maybe I can come. I never get to come. I have spring break next week. It's always weekdays. I'm like, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll bring Andy. He can watch the littles. It's perfect. He's 80, so grown up.
So grown.
I like when we use him as child labor. He was like a baby. We had thrown those seeds for us. He's so big. Okay. Okay, regular parks updates. Knotweed and or other things you want to talk about.
Bristol Town Greens looking soft and mucky.
Mhm.
Couple people mentioned to me it's looking a little patchy. So maybe we could think about reinvigorating it with some conservation mix. We only have people to mow it. They don't spread the seed. So something I could.
We've been training Andy since he was a baby.
Spread the seed.
If we need spreaders, we got a lot of
Yeah.
kindergarten,
Yeah.
pre-K,
Yeah,
just
totally,
ask
yeah.
anyone at the playground.
So, I mean, it wouldn't be bad. It would, if we did it sooner than later, it would take and it'd be pretty robust. So maybe I'll look into that. Paris Farm sells, like, when I took care of Rockydale property, I go there to get a big bag of conservation mix.
Paris is no longer.
Yeah, they closed. It was sad.
Oh, jeez.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
it tells you how long I haven't been there. Well, I can look into it either way. but that's something that can be done. I need to touch base with tree warden John Swepson. We had some in passing dialogue regarding an approach to pruning and deadheading a few things that need to be done. Other than that, park's looking pretty good. It's gonna be spring soon, so I need to touch base with whatever vendor we've used in the past to get new certified chips put out into the play area. And then I will be recoating with a toxic wood protectant on the play structure now that we've done some repairs, and it's about due. It's looking a little exposed. So that's on my punch list for that park. Some electrical updates and some electrical renovations with the lights on the bandstand. I'm working with Matt Myers on that, so I just need to circle back to that now that we're in springtime. Sycamore Park, I got the kiosk glass back in there with the help of a friend.
Oh.
So it's a little punky on the top, so it needs a little carpentry love to keep the retention guide back in its position, so when the wind blows and it gets wind behind there, it doesn't buckle and fall out and then smash.
Right.
So we were lucky the first time that didn't happen. I've been touring there. It looks good. Not a lot of trash to report though. There is occasional trash dumping in the parking lot area, but that's not a surprise. Eagle Park's pretty much asleep. There's huge piles of snow. Well, it's less now, but yeah, it was pretty much isolated off, so you couldn't really access it without like really.
And the rails are
scaling.
still,
Rails, everything out, like all the hard infrastructure looks good.
Good.
It's pretty solid. And then Sycamore Park and Knotweed. So I just did some research and trying to think about our approach, digging and then maybe doing some glyphosol application, which if you got that email, you kind of got an understanding of how it's very kind of a precise control, which I totally dig. It's relatively safe in terms of somebody like myself applying to it. Right now, we're at a point in the season where what we didn't whack back with the big deck when Public Works came down, we should seize that opportunity and get as much back as we want to reclaim. So when those rhizomes start to shutter and come up through with new sprouts, we'll have access to be able to work on a mitigation approach and get that back. And it seems like with the glyphosol foam spray, it's very targeted. You can do it very controlled wise with either a stock wiping application or over the leaves. And then it looks like it's a surefire way to kill deep down below the root, because some of those travel like 10 feet.
Was that one saying you still needed to dig it up, the rhizome, or was that the first guy was like, you can dig it up?
If you have a cut shovel and you have
Next
very
year.
sporadic patches of it,
Yeah.
you can use a cut shovel and leverage it out and pull them.
But if you use the poison there.
With the poison, yeah, with the glyphosol, you can put it on there, it gets into the fibrous tissue, and then it goes straight down into it and wipes it out, which is great.
Will then, because I know that like they propagate from a tiny piece of the plant, does
Yeah.
it kill it in a way that it will not propagate from itself?
Yeah, it looks like it. If you attack it in a very systematic way, I think the stalks have to be a certain size to do it for wiping. It's the most effective. And then when you whack it down and then it comes up like 2 or 3 feet, I believe John said in that content I sent you, you can spray the leaf and then you can just kind of dollop it all over the place. And then it'll dissipate and then it'll dry on and then go down into the thing. So, we would apply that, if we were gonna go that approach, we would apply that like, in the autumn. Yeah.
Is there anything you could cut it too and like do that little stop head?
Yeah, you
Seemed
can
like a lot
inject,
more
there's like, yeah, you
Yeah,
can
the
do that, or
injector
you can
seemed a little
inject them,
goofy,
like,
yeah.
there's like, we have
Just walking
lots
around the
of
each-
knotweed that are
And
massive,
it
so.
says the injection takes more.
Yeah, two more, yeah.
So just a few things for us, just like interesting information, and then I talked to John directly, because I'm like, I need like an industrial spraying apparatus, and he's like, oh, we got a big one, like, we're making a big one that you could use, and they have a larger one. And then like, it'd be like a couple $100, and 64 ounces gives you 6 gallons of foam, so there's the foaming agent and then the actual herbicide, the glyphosate,
Yeah,
and
it was
then
like
you
point.
mix that concoction together, and the foaming agent is pretty benign. And then it's blue colored to kind of let you know where your targets are, and then watch it dissipate. So that's really cool. And a lot of that system's built around being able to like not, like Roundup, like where it just
Yeah.
wastes everything in sight. It's not a kill-all spray. It's like you take your time and do it precisely.
That was another thing they were mentioning, and there was like planning out your path about.
Exactly, so you don't get it all over
Especially if you're
yourself.
with other people, right? Like
Right,
make sure that you're
exactly.
working like inside
Yeah.
out, or
Yep.
even 1 year do this part, 1 year
Right.
do that part, or whatever. But with like 4 or 5 people, you could knock that down.
Yeah, I mean, I think just getting some sort of control on it, and then trying it out and see how it works. And I think if we were to make that approach, getting enough of it to do the most impactful patches that are really established and see how it works, and then come back next season and be like, all right. And then hopefully we have positive results, as shown through that content, and then we're like, okay, now we have control over it, and we can start gaining lawn back, because we're losing lawn every year.
Because then you cut it, like once it's dead, you still have to cut it all back.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
you're
and
never
do
gonna
whatever you're gonna do
eradicate
to-
Japanese knotweed. You're
Just
never
to,
gonna
like,
eradicate it, but
yeah.
if you can suppress it enough where it's,
Yeah.
gets down to a third of what it was, and then if you take that third and every season you keep doing this application, you might just be
It seemed like
just
it.
sparsely amount of it. I mean, it's always gonna come downstream. It's always gonna collect in those eddies, it's always gonna be there, but for the lawn of Sycamore Park, where people traverse, that would be most ideal. So that's what I have.
Cool.
Kristen, I'm trying to remember, I think 7 or 8 years ago, there was a group of people from the Conservation Commission that were going out somewhere, like I think Baldwin Creek, but I'm not positive, and were applying herbicides to knotweed on someone's.
Oh, on Saunders,
It
on
was
the Paul Fuller.
Saunders,
Paul
okay,
Fuller.
okay,
And we hired Bob Hyam,
okay.
to do that.
Is that like this same thing, or
It
was it
was very targeted.
successful?
and it was successful.
was,
The
okay.
aim
Maybe it
there,
was the same-
the aim, what's that?
Maybe it was the same product.
It may have been the same product, but the aim there was to kick back the Japanese knotweed for 2, 3, 4 years until the trees that we planted outgrew the knotweed and got
okay.
ahead of the
Right,
knotweed.
so
Got it.
can't suppress it.
Yeah,
Got it,
so now
okay.
there's still knotweed there, but it's smaller than the trees that have
Awesome.
regenerated. so,
Okay. There's also the knotweed eagle that's starting to cross the path now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would be-
Yeah.
That's like a little spot that would be good to
To-
get
Get
back.
that
To
blue
get-
foam.
Yeah, well, there's also, he mentioned in terms next to waterways like that, there's
rodeo.
like an aqua safe
Mm.
herbicide to
nice.
use. So I don't know if glyphosate, I have to look at my.
Rodeo is the
Yeah,
brand name. for
yeah,
the
so
water
the
safe
glyphosate,
variety.
this is like the substrate you use, the foam of that, but I just need to look more at the state of Vermont and the use of
Mhm.
glyphosate, but there's aqua safe herbicides to
Oh,
use,
nice.
which I would probably suggest if it didn't meet the
Yeah.
requirements, obviously.
Mhm.
Cause that's a swimming hole.
Yeah.
And my
Well, but
family lives
anything-
upstream and downstream from New Haven, so.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
say
wanna be that
anything
guy.
that's spraying in Sycamore Park ends up in the water though, right?
Right.
So,
That's true, Sycamore can flood. then
right,
it's-
yeah.
Well, typically not try and do it when it's.
Right, about to-
Gonna flood.
But that's one also where you can maybe cut them and then do just that little dollop on top.
Yeah, I mean,
That's-
you don't
that's-
need to
you don't
sit
need
there
that
and
much, it's
hose
gonna-
it down, like, that's not the
Sure.
approach. The approach is
Yeah,
like,
Sure.
whack it back so that you're not in a thicket, so the thicket's suppressed, right, and all the dead
Yeah.
woody fibers are down, the stalks are down, and then you start to go like, oh, okay, this is the target area.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
and I don't expect to whack every little stalk down, but just enough to be like, all right, this seems like a manageable swath that we can get in, work it back and work our way out.
Especially if it's the smaller ones, like we're saying, okay, it's by the
Right.
swimming hole, we just knock out that bit and then.
Right.
I don't think the water, because it seemed like it absorbed it within 24 hours.
Yeah, well, that's the
Right,
thing,
and
it's like a
just-
foam
it's
substrate that
sucked in.
that sticks to it really good, so like, if it's slightly breezy or whatever, you don't have to worry about like it pluming out everywhere. And then it just slowly gets down into the root, into the rhizome and the system, and then it just knocks it out, which I think is most ideal.
Okay, great. This is related to parks, but could be the next thing. No mow May. What are we planning at this point? I've lost the thread. Aiden was looking into this mostly, I think, but now Helen is leaving, has left, or she's retired. So we need to think about because she was always kind of our point, but you also help with some of the signs, right?
Yeah.
So it's trying to think about what's the plan? Are we doing that? Are we no mowing? What's happening?
So in the last meeting where I was here, I, recap with Meredith about the meeting, and then I said, well, what about doing this swath back at Sycamore Park? And she said, no, because she said it's the most thickest, hardest thing to mow, and the mow guys will be mad, and so on and so forth. There's all these underlying factors. But I was like, well, where would the other showcase be? I mean, I thought it was a good compromising thing, but it's like, that's the most robust grass in the whole park, like anywhere but there. And I was like, okay. And then that's kind of where we left that. So, I still think it's important, because it's an important thing to understand, like, why we're doing it, and we should show it, and then I don't know.
Yeah.
It's mowing over money and all that other stuff which involves it, which I totally understand, but at the same time, it's like, unless we get perfect amounts of rain and sun, but grass is never gonna get like 40, not so, you gotta get out there with the sigh and the hat on and like cut back the hay, I don't know, that's where my superior left it with me.
Well, we still can have a campaign on private lands, right?
Mhm.
In the
Sure.
village with
Yeah.
We
signs.
still have a bunch of
Not
signs.
mine, but yeah.
Our backyard would be the show.
So none of us are doing it currently.
You got taken
Other
over
parts
for
are
weeds
doing it.
because we did a winter one a couple of years.
So you're not gonna mow. That's
We don't
perfect.
mow anyway. We don't mow.
Ticks are out,
No,
so
What if
we
you
have
ever
to
mowed?
take care.
We only mow for the
Beer
4th of
cans.
July, everybody.
Just that other thing back there, it's a hazard.
No, but we have to take care of the weed
Oh.
part.
I
Bring that
think
back. We've got a ton of invasives back there.
mowing, as like I was saying, we don't, because we have a dog, and then ticks are already out, and I don't wanna deal with that when we're out there. So I feel like when we have done it, other homeowners are like kind of hesitant to not mow their lawn.
Hmm.
So I feel like how to develop it into more of the pollinators, because I don't know very much about pollinators, but the grass itself isn't that helpful. I don't think. If anyone knows more, like, they can correct me, but I feel like it's more of like the clover and the plants than the actual just like grass. I mean, I think they're in the grass, and so mowing disturbs them, maybe. I'm trying to remember kind of what Helen was talking about.
Mhm.
So maybe focus more on pollinators and planting than not mowing.
Like
Which
get
was-
people to plant pollinator gardens.
Yeah, or like, hey, if you're going to, put a plant in, put this in because it's pollinator
We're like
friendly.
taking a pussy willow fence.
Or
Yeah.
make
I
a
planted a million pussy willows in our yard to make a fence last year.
So that sort of thing instead of just don't mow your grass.
Yeah,
But no mow sounds like.
It sounds so much
everyone's right off the
better.
top.
It's got a nice. word.
So-
It's also
Yeah.
nice because we can hand out signs at the green day table.
Yeah.
You can
It's
also,
convenient.
you don't have to
Right.
no mow your
Yeah.
entire yard, like you can
Right.
no mow strips of it.
You could just leave no mow May and tall grass.
Yeah.
So figuring out, I feel like
Because we're gonna need, let's put it this way,
how to make it easy for people.
we need to have, if we're gonna not mow, we need to have a plan at our next meeting, which would be the 10th. So I don't know if someone wants to be the champion of this, or if we wanna let it go this year, but we need a plan next month if we're gonna do it, because by then it'll be May,
That's
right?
true.
So I just wanna think about if anyone wants to like, if anyone wants to do it, that's great. I'm doing green up day that time of year, so I'm not gonna do that, but if someone wants to be like the no mow
I mean-
person.
Over 70 different butterflies and moths depend on native grasses as part of their life cycles.
But like lawn isn't native grass, is it?
Kentucky
bluegrass.
Lawn is a parking lot,
Grass
but
that's here, native, I would
I
imagine.
mean, Kentucky, it doesn't sound like it's native.
no,
Well, I don't
no,
think
that's a
that's
huge
exactly
problem.
what they mean,
But most of our lawns are non-native grasses.
Right,
But-
so
That's fair.
I'll look into it.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, so
Cool.
they're gonna look into it. Okay, and then Aiden, are you gonna continue having those discussions with Meredith? Or
Or
are you
is that
like,
or is that done?
You're
From a-
done.
From a distance.
That's what I'm saying, like,
No, I'm,
That's fine.
no.
no, you can.
I'm being
you can
silly.
not-
I mean, like,
no, it's okay.
these conversations kind of haven't really gone anywhere over the last few years. It might be something that it's time to let go and focus in a different area.
You
Right,
can't fight the mow guys and the mow guys.
Yeah,
mow
I mean-
like- Bottom line
Yeah,
is no
yeah,
mow
there you
man
go.
and the lawn
There's-
care industry are,
That's
and
exactly-
industry always wins.
That's exactly,
That's true.
I think that's what, like Meredith surmised, right, what Alex said, like, just made, you
But
know.
if.
I don't
the
like no tile June
swamp is-
Say it again?
You said that the part we were thinking of, that Meredith said no, was far into the park.
Well, it's just, that's the most difficult, she said the grass there grows thick and robust and higher than, and quicker than any other spot. You picked the spot that's the least conducive to do this, and so I was like, okay. And
So
she's
what
like,
spot is most?
I'm-
Right.
I guess I'm just asking why, like, how much advertising, I guess, like, does somebody go to the park and be like, this patch isn't mowed? And then they read the sign, and then do they think, oh, I'm not gonna mow my lawn? Like, I'm guessing, how much does an
Yeah.
impact have of a park not mowing 4 feet?
Right,
Or if we just don't need that example and we just put signs up.
signs up in
instead.
people's yards,
Mm.
yeah, that
Right.
volunteer.
Instead, and then
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
have that visual of like, oh, this
Mhm.
grass is
Yeah.
1 inch
Yep.
taller than the other grass, but
Right.
it's, like you said, it's May in Vermont, and the
Right.
grass hasn't really grown that much.
Right,
Yeah,
depending, right.
So I don't know if we need
Maybe-
a visual.
out of town
I think it
park.
was just it was our pitch for like a public showcase, right? Where you have foot traffic.
I feel like if
so-
we
Part
were,
of
the
it's do as you
green would
say,
be
though, too,
better.
right? Like,
Right.
eat your own dog food.
I mean-
can get some other metaphors, but.
best case scenario is nothing gets mowed by the town, and we help the pollinators and the birds, and that's great.
Yes.
But our next best case is at least we can educate people using the town
Right.
parks. But if that's also not gonna fly, at least we can educate by having some signs and sending out some
In people's yards.
Some from Porch Forum, putting the things out at the real estate table, right?
Yeah.
That's like that's like the third
The
best.
fallback.
But
We
at least
do
it's
some
something,
mowing in
right?
our front yard
Yeah.
and have our sign right out on Pleasant Street.
What about more signage at the pollinator garden itself? And like, as you were saying, like encouraging people to plant pollinator gardens, which is probably better and more like more durably beneficial for pollinators in the first place. What if we like got ourselves a sign at the pollinator garden
Yeah.
discussing like what is in this, what is,
Couple
what are you looking
laminated
at, how can you
signs
do
by
this
the
yourself?
Eagle
and
Park one, if that's
what's
still
it
exists at
benefiting?
this point.
Sort of have to exist.
And then there's
But the one at Sycamore,
half exists or full exists.
Eagle Half.
They're
Could I
both-
mention the idea that maybe Nancy and Aiden, it seems like Aiden, if you would go back to Meredith and say, listen, how about we just do a small sample? Because it's always the maximum.
Sure.
Start small, right? Just do a small patch, let's find out what this is all about, because it's been talked about as a larger section of Sycamore. I don't see it's unreasonable to do a small patch. There will be local people that put signs out. Alex, not Matt, Alex and Xavier that have this month. And then I think even a small patch in the town green that is reasonable. So I think that starting small it gives us educational
Yeah, I
opportunities.
mean, I thought like around the cannon, like away from the steps in the memorial area, like around next to one side of the cannon or something, would be a great showcase. Cause it's right by the entry and you wouldn't necessarily have to get a mow deck in there
Yeah.
for those guys, like the guys that are gonna hedge around with the weed whacker could just
No,
like
yeah.
do that in a minute, and then now we're back to where they started, and there's no complaints. Like, I never really envisioned it being like this thing where like they gotta get in there with 2 decks and really work it down, like, I didn't, like, I guess I should have phrased it better to Meredith, but like, not like a huge thing to be like this cascading wheat field, like, just a little space that's like, yeah, this is like as big as this table.
I think the town green might be the best. I
Be
feel
more
like it's the
visible.
most visible when people are there, people see it.
I'll
Versus like a real
Ellen's
remote
point was
spot
that it's
in
like
Sycamore.
not a place where there's a habitat, but like,
Right.
if our whole point is education,
Right,
Right,
then,
Yeah.
that,
then that is the best place. to
which
go.
that kind of is.
Right, but near the cannons to the strip, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, can we quickly
Alright.
throw through some things really quick here? Green Up Day. I have no updates. I haven't heard anything from anyone
We put
since
the
last
bag-
month.
we
There's
put the
been
bags out.
nothing.
Rec-
Yep,
rec department puts the
I'm
bags
gonna
out.
get the bags and the stuff soon, but I haven't heard from anyone. So when I do, I'll have lots to say next month, but I don't have anything right now.
Cool.
Educational outreach.
No updates.
No
updates. You're welcome, guys.
All right, all right.
Gonna get out of
Okay,
here.
website updates. The following things need to be updated. Nancy and Carolyn have both continued their membership through 2029. Which
I know,
sounds
when
like
he
the
said-
future.
I was like,
Sounds like a
Do we
long
have a
time.
website?
In the
Web
I saw website
page,
updates,
web
yeah.
page. Sorry, I wrote it wrong. Web
That's on
page.
the town.
We need to add the 2024 annual report. I just forgot to do that so far. We need to change Helen's seat to vacant, which will also expire in 2029. And then we need to, after our annual meeting, which is in April, have to update the new rules. Does anyone have anything else they want to update on there? But since no one knows it exists except me, I guess it's not a problem.
Wasn't Aiden gonna become a member?
Oh, right,
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about that
Real-
under,
real
wait,
briefly.
wait.
Getting ahead of myself.
BBC membership, continue.
Is Aiden?
Okay, real brief thing. Ian proposed that because there's a vacancy, that it should be announced and get announced out to the public. For pure transparency, because as Jim mentioned to me at end of town meeting, it looks not very transparent for me to fill that position and also be a part of the rec department, because there could potentially be conflicts of interest. Now, from my understanding, and Carolyn can jump in on this, that there is no bylaws saying that a rec department or person in the municipality can't join. But I think what Ian is proposing is sensible, and if somebody fills it, that's not me, that's totally cool. I'll still be at the meetings, because I still have to steward the parks. So, so be it. And then if nobody takes it, then we can do that. And if there's anything within our discourse that would potentially be a conflict of interest, I'll just recuse myself.
What
Sounds
is
like a
the
plan.
timeline like that makes people happy to say, well, it was on the website for X amount of time until we're like,
How many front or forward cycles?
Well, we have advertising membership for this commission for 8 straight years to
How
get
did
a
you do
full. He
her
overheard me.
talking to my friend.
He overheard me talking, waiting at the school for kids, yeah. I was like, we need more members, and he's like, interesting.
I mean, she was talking loudly, yes.
She was like,
That's true, that's fair, guilty.
We need more
Yes.
members. Yeah.
How many
Um,
seats do we have currently?
No,
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking. We currently have one.
9.
We are allowed to have 7 to 9. They have to be residents of the town. They're 4 years, except sometimes they're 3, so we can offset people, I think. The appointment should be 4 terms, except when there is a vacancy, you just join for the rest. So it's all lines up evenly. So the person will jump into the vacant spot. The spot just is moving through time always, and you jump into a vacant spot. So we keep all those lined up. We did a whole big thing about that a few years ago. Does that work? You can remove a member. If there's a problem, but also if you miss 3 times in a row. Or no, it was 3 times in a year, I think, actually, technically. Right.
Include 3
3
consecutive.
consecutive
Unexcused absences.
from the question meetings during the preceding 12-month period. So yeah, I guess, yeah. So if it's 3 in a row,
Unexcused.
and that has happened, we have had that where it's like someone just sort of like ghosts the commission, like, I guess they're gone, so. And then we had, say, all things we filled by the select board. No one is concerned without compensation. So as far as I know, you have to be a resident. So that's what I replied to Ian about when I was asked.
Yeah.
I said, look at the
Yeah, so I
bylaws.
think, I think that's all
That kinda makes
reasonable,
sense.
and I think like, yeah, let's just, for the sake of transparency and to pitch this idea from Ian, that's fine as town administrator, like, it's fine.
So what's the answer to the question? How long do we put it up there for?
I think we could just do it until our annual, just do it
Just until April.
Till next.
just this next month,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
I think we just send
Yeah.
out a thing this, I'll do it, cause we're we have no clerk officially right now. So you'll finish these minutes and you'll send them to Sharon. Yes, and all of us. Yes, I'm the clerk. And then I'll send out this, I'll advertise this.
I don't have her.
I have it,
Clerk.
clerk
Oh,
at
okay.
bristolbt.org.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just,
That's the right
If you
one
just
though,
Google-
she'll get it.
yeah, if you just Google clerk, Bristol, Sharon,
Okay,
you'll
That
find
one.
her email.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you about it.
okay, and then. Okay, and then I'm gonna send out a front porch forum vacancy.
Yep.
Fort with, and then I will also do so in our next minutes. It'll say like, we have a vacancy, we're looking for 1 member, so it'll be 2 places on front porch forum.
Awesome.
Oh, but no one's gonna post it on front porch forum because we don't have a clerk. So I'll have to also put it on front porch forum next month.
Did Helen leave? Is she?
Well, we thought that this was the annual meeting and I told her this could be her last one, whatever she wanted, because she wanted to just jump in her seat in January.
Mhm.
When she decided she was ready to retire. But then I found out, because I was reading this, looking to see if Aiden was a conflict of interest. So our annual meeting is the first meeting in April. So I had told everyone this was the annual meeting, but it's not technically. I thought it was the first meeting after the town meeting, but it's not. It's the first meeting of April, which I guess in certain calendar years might be different. So anyhow, it's next month. So I'll send this to Front Porch Forum if I remember. For the record, I don't know if I'll remember, and then I'll send that out, okay?
Well, so does that mean though that we don't actually have an open seat until April technically?
No.
No, it doesn't, because she,
Cause she did resign.
She's
She's
resigned,
resigned, yeah.
She made an announcement, she's.
so if someone over here is Carolyn talking really loud, they.
Yeah,
Yes.
our best. advocate.
That's so far.
Talking really loud.
So far, I mean, I can't argue with results, you know? Okay, so that's how that's gonna work. Okay, beautiful. And then our next meeting will be Thursday, April 10th, and we'll have our annual meeting and we'll do all the things we said we we're gonna do.
Sweet.
And we're gonna be turning that corner towards spring, so maybe also think about dates you want to do, like Eagle Park, cleanup, or a sycamore, anything like that. We should think about getting those on the calendar as we flip into.
Attack the Japanese knotweed.
Yes.
Yeah, as we get into actual spring, we might wanna think about those things at that meeting.
Plus,
okay?
it'll be fun just to go down to Sycamore Park. It's so different after they cut it back. It was like, wow, okay, that was all that took was like 4 hours. And then heavy deck, and you're like,
Cool.
well, now we can flow through here better. Yeah, it's not the prettiest thing, but it's.
Okay, and so that's the end of the business items I have. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion adjourned.
Adjourn.
I hear a motion to adjourn. There's a second. All those in
Very
favor?
fishy.
The meeting is adjourned. The
Aye.
adjourned have it. Bye, John.
Bye, John.
Bye, John.
Bye-bye.
What?
Okay, so everyone, 16 minutes late. To my best.
Duran.
That was pretty good for how much we could have kept talking.
DUR.
We could have talked
A&B.
forever about some of those things, yeah.
Yep.
Some big topics.
Yeah, for real.
All right, y'all.
Alrighty, good to see you guys.
Maybe I'll see you at Sycamore, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be fine. The
So
script.
it's basically like, it doesn't matter, it doesn't do anything, don't do it, it's a waste of time, essentially.
See, I, that, I
And,
did
and
look
it
it up
says there's
after.
drawbacks